Meanwhile, at Nkechi's home, Kiki had woken up early, but unlike the panic that had consumed her father, she felt a strange calmness settle over her. She had been so desperate for freedom, for the chance to experience the outside world, that she hadn't truly stopped to think about the consequences of her action. Now, as she sat at the small kitchen table in Nkechi's house, she felt a deep sense of guilt creeping in. I have to go back, Kiki murmured to herself. The words felt heavy on her tongue. Despite her newfound freedom, her mind kept telling her to return to her mother because she kept seeing the image of her mother's face, the thought of her father's fury. Nkechi noticed the change in her demeanor and sat beside her. "What's on your mind, child?" she asked gently. "I can't stay here forever," Kiki said, her voice quiet. "My father, he must be worried. I don't know what to do." Nkechi gave her a kind smile, but there was sadness in her eyes. "It's not easy as it is. The world outside can be overwhelming." "I don't want to go back to that life," Kiki confessed, her voice trembling. "I can't live like that anymore. But my father will be furious if he finds out what I have done. He will never forgive me." Nkechi placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to take the first step towards change. But no matter what happens, Kiki, remember that you are not alone. You have the power to shape your own future." Talabi's worry was mounting every passing hour. It's been nearly a full day since Kiki's disappearance, and he hadn't heard a single word from his men. He had sent messages to his wealthiest contacts in the city, pleading with them to use their influence to find his daughter. But his frustration was growing. "She must be out there somewhere," he muttered, pacing around. "She can't just vanish. I will make sure everyone who dares to hide her regrets it." He has sent his guards to comb the streets, the marketplaces, even the alleyways, where he knew troubles often breed. But deep down, a voice in his head was telling him that Kiki might not be in the lost city. She might be gone willingly. It was a bitter thought, but the possibility gnawed at him. What if she had chosen to leave? What if she had decided that life outside these protective walls was more appealing than being controlled, sheltered existence he created for her? No, Talabi shook his head violently. That couldn't be true. His mind turned back to the one thing he feared most, the possibility of Kiki being defied by another man. The very idea of it made his stomach churn with disgust. His wealth, his entire existence depended on his daughter's remaining pure. If his daughter's virginity was lost, if she had succumbed to the world outside, his prosperity would wither. The thought was too much to bear. His mind raced as he considered what he would do if his daughter had indeed been corrupted. Would he be able to recover from such a blow? Would his harvest ever be the same? But he refused to let those thoughts overwhelm him. He will find Kikilomo. He will bring her home no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Kikilomo and Ade's growing friendship. Back at Nkechi's house, Kiki was beginning to feel the weight of her choice. The world outside was full of wonders and new experiences. But she knew that her father would never forgive her for what she had done. Her fear and guilt were compounded by the uncertainty of her future. As she sat with Ade later that afternoon, they talked about the world outside, Talabi's compound. He spoke of university, of career choices, of friendship and love. Kiki listened intently, fascinated by how free he was to choose his path to live without the constant surveillance. "I wish I could do what you do," Kiki said wistfully. "You can," Ade said, his voice calm and encouraging. "You just have to decide what kind of life you want. But it won't be easy, Kiki. Life outside your father's world is full of challenges, and you have to learn to navigate them on your own terms." "I don't think I'm ready," Kiki admitted, her voice with uncertainty. "You don't have to be ready all at once," Ade reassured her. "Take it one step at a time." But Kiki knew that no matter how much Ade encouraged her, the real test would be when her father found her. Would she go back to the life she had been running from? Or would she find a way to carve her own path here? Talabi's house was in chaos. The once orderly and peaceful home was now filled with frenzied voices and quick movement. The guards and workers rushed in and out of the house, reporting every possible lead of Kiki's whereabouts. Every minute felt like an eternity to Talabi. He had barely eaten or slept since she went missing, and his mind was overwhelmed with worry and anger. He stood in the middle of his spacious living room, glaring at his wives and servants. As his fists clenched, his mind was racing. He couldn't just let this slip away. His wealth, his legacy, depended on his daughters remaining virgin, especially Kiki. He couldn't let her lose her purity to some stranger in the city. How can she just disappear like that? Talabi muttered under his breath, pacing in agitated circles. How could you let her leave? He snapped at his first wife, Adebisi, who was standing with a worried expression, hand folded together. You were supposed to be looking after her. I, I don't know, Talabi, Adebisi said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. We all tried to stop her. She was always so curious, asking about the outside world. And what did you do? Let her wander off on her own? Talabi's voice was rising now, his frustration evident in every word. His mind returned to the thought of Kiki being violated, and he shuddered at the very idea. His wealth, his crops, his prosperity were at stake. He could not let that defy him. I'm sorry, husband, Adebisi said, bowing her head in sorrow. We'll find her. We'll bring her back. But Talabi wasn't listening. His thought was clouded by his obsession with keeping Kiki untouched. He has worked so hard for so many years of sacrifice to ensure his daughter's virginity, his daughter's purity, to protect his wealth. He couldn't lose it now, not after everything he had done. Meanwhile, Kikiloma wandered through the streets of Ibadan, her heart heavy with a mixture of guilt and confusion. She couldn't stop thinking about her family, especially her mother, how her mother was holding up. Was she worried? Was she sick? Talabi's voice echoed in her mind, telling her she was ruining everything. He was probably angry, furious at her for disobeying his rules. She had broken the one rule that mattered the most to him. She had left the house without his permission. But it wasn't just about the rules. Kiki had lived under strict supervision her entire life. She had never been allowed to venture out, to explore the world beyond the gates of her father's house. Now, for the first time in her life, she felt a sense of freedom. Freedom she never knew she wanted until now. She had seen the bustling city, the busy shops and the people living their lives without fear. The world outside was so much bigger than the small confined space she had known. Yet the fear of her father's wrath loomed over her. What if he was right? What if she was ruining everything? As she sat on the steps of a shop, her thought began to clear. She knew she had made a mistake by running away without telling anyone, but her desire to experience the world outside has been so strong to ignore. Kiki wasn't like her other siblings. She didn't want to be trapped in a gilded cage forever. She wanted to know what life outside had to offer. Her thoughts were interrupted when Ade appeared, walking towards her with a concerned expression on his face. He had noticed how distant Kikilomo had become over the past few days. She had spent most of her time alone, staring out into the city, lost in thought. Are you okay? Ade asked, sitting beside her. He could see the confusion and sadness in her eyes. I don't know, Kiki said quietly. I feel like I'm running away from something that I don't even know. I don't know what to do. You have been through a lot, Ade said gently. It's not easy being forced into a life you didn't choose. But now, you have the chance to choose for yourself. Kiki looked at him. But what if my father never forgives me? What if I ruin everything? You haven't ruined anything, Ade said firmly. You have the right to live your life on your own terms. You just need to decide what kind of life you want. Kiki nodded slowly, deep in thought. I have been told what to do my whole life. I never have a choice, but now I can choose. She stood up, looking around the busy street of Ibadan. It felt like the whole world was open to her. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of dreaming of something different. Maybe, maybe it's time to decide who I am really, or who I want to be, she said in quiet determination. Back at Talabi's house, the hours dragged on. His anxiety continued to rise as he waited for any word on Kiki's whereabouts. He had sent all his men out to search the city, but there had been no news. His mind kept returning to the worst possible scenario. What if Kiki had already been defied? What if it was too late? His mind raced with fear, frustration, and guilt. He had always kept his daughter sheltered, always made sure they stayed virgins, and now one of them was missing. The thought of losing his wealth, his prosperity, and the very thing he had worked his entire life to build haunted him. His farm was his lifeblood. He couldn't afford to let his legacy slip away. His mind twisted in a frenzy, but considered it. He stormed into the study and slammed the fist down on the desk, making the papers and books scatter. I will not let her ruin everything I have built, Talabi shouted, his voice filled with desperation. He couldn't rest. His wealth was at stake. He couldn't lose everything he had fought for. He couldn't let Kiki's disappearance bring him to ruin. That night, Kiki lay in the bed in Nkechi's house, staring at the ceiling. She had spent a day with Ade, talking, laughing, and learning about the world she had never been a part of. She felt more alive than she had been in years. But as the day ended, the weight of her decision grew heavier. She knew she couldn't go back to the life her father had planned for her. She couldn't return to the confines of his house, the rules, the pressures to be perfect. But what would happen if she hadn't? What would her father do when he found out? Tears welled up her eyes as she thought about her mother. How would her mother feel? Would she be angry at Kikiloma for leaving? Would she ever forgive her? In that moment, Kiki made a decision. She wouldn't go back to the life her father had set for her. She would return home, yes, but not as the obedient daughter she once was. She would return as someone who had seen the world beyond her father's gate, someone who was ready to take control of her future. The sun was beginning to set as the sound of the car's tires crunching on the gravel driveway filled the tense silence. Kikilomo, her mind swelling with thought of the confrontation she was about to face, sat beside Nkechi, who had insisted on taking her home. Adebisi, Kiki's mother, followed closely behind, both women determined to support her despite the uncertainty of how Talabi would react. As they pulled up to the compound, Kiki's heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea what kind of reception awaited her, but she was certain it wouldn't be easy. She wouldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. She was going back to the only place she had ever known, but she was also returning to the father who had always been controlling her life. The car came to a stop and Kiki hesitated before stepping out. Nkechi gave her a reassuring glance, but even if she knew this would be difficult, Adebisi, however, held her head high as she followed her daughter out of the car, her face etched with a mixture of concern and anger. Talabi was already standing in the courtyard, his tall figure looming over the compound as he waited for their arrival. His eyes narrowed as he saw Kiki approach, his face hardened and unforgiving. The moment she stepped onto the ground, Talabi's gaze flickered over her, searching for any sign of betrayal or something that had been lost while she was away. But his first words were unexpected, cutting straight to the heart of his obsession. "Are you still a virgin?" Talabi's voice boomed, his tone as sharp as a whip. The word hung in the air, and for a moment there was complete silence. Kiki froze, caught off guard by the questions. The others, Nkechi and Adebisi, looked at him with shock and confusion. "Talabi, what do you mean by that?" Adebisi asked, her voice rising with anger as she stepped forward, her hands trembling with disbelief. "Is that how you greet a daughter who had been missing all these days? After all the fear and worry we have been through, this is how you welcome her?" Kiki's body tensed as she felt her father's piercing gaze on her. Her heart raced, and despite her resolve, she could feel the anxiety creeping in. She hadn't expected the questions to come out so bluntly. But before she would gather herself, Talabi's anger flared. He stepped towards Kiki, his presence overwhelming. "Answer me, Kikilomo," Talabi barked. "Are you still pure? Or have you already thrown it all away?" Before anyone would react, he grabbed Kiki's hand roughly, his fingers digging into her skin as he yanked towards him. "Answer me now," he demanded, his grip tightening painfully. The shock of it all left Kiki momentarily paralyzed. She had been bracing for this anger, for she felt like something worse was coming, like a brutal attempt to break her down before she could even have the chance to speak. Fear settled in her chest as she looked up at her father. She stammered, her voice trembling with fear. I didn't do anything. I'm still pure. But then, as the word escaped her lips, something within Kikilomo snapped. She no longer cared about the consequences of what she said. She wasn't the same girl who had left the house, weak, frightened, and controlled. She stood up straighter, meeting her father's eyes with fierceness she had never shown before. But I'm not a prisoner anymore, father. I've stopped being one. I won't let you cage me in any longer. I will go out more often now to see the world I have been missing. Her voice was both defiant and angry now, filled with years of suppressed frustration. The words tasted bitter in her tongue, but they were truth. She had seen the world outside, and it had awakened something inside of her. She wasn't going to let her father control her life anymore. Talabi's face twisted with a rage. He could not tolerate this deviance, this refusal to follow his rules. He couldn't let her disrespect him like this. In one swift motion, he shoved her hard, sending her crashing to the ground. Get up, he shouted, his voice venomous. You must obey me. You will learn how to do so. You think you can talk back at me like that? You think you can leave and come back as if nothing happened? You are nothing but a disgrace. Kikiloma cried out as she hit the ground again, pain shooting her body. But she didn't move. She had already made up her mind. She was no longer the person who cowered before his wrath. The workers who had gathered around the courtyard looked on nervously, unsure of how to intervene. Talabi, however, was in no mood of mercy. Lock her in, he ordered, his voice cold and firm. Don't give her food. Let her think about what she has done. No, Talabi, Adebisi cried, rushing forward to stop him. Please listen to me. You can't treat her like this. She's your daughter. She's been through so much. And you. But Talabi didn't listen. His anger has completely taken over. With a forceful gesture, he ordered the workers to carry out his command. And within moments, Kikiloma was being dragged away, her protest falling on deaf ears. Talabi, please, Nkechi pleaded, stepping forward with tears in her eyes. This isn't the way to handle this. She needs your understanding, not punishment. But Talabi, in his rage, couldn't hear the word. He was too focused on the control he had lost, too consumed by the fear of what Kikiloma rebellion meant for his world. As the door slammed shut behind his daughter, he turned back to the scene, retreating into his own thoughts, consumed by fury and pride. The night air was thick with tension as Talabi paced restlessly in his room, his mind racing. His thoughts circled endlessly around Kikilomo's return, her deviant words echoing in his ears. I won't let you cage me in anymore. He couldn't shake the fear that had gripped him since her disappearance. He had been angry, furious even, but deep inside, a gnawing sense of dread gnawed at him. What if she had lied about her purity? What if everything he had worked so hard to protect, the ritual, his wealth, and his prosperity of his farm, was now in jeopardy? His mind kept returning to the same terrifying thought. What if Kikiloma had been defied? What if she had lost her virginity while wandering outside the safety of this compound? The idea was unbearable. The dark secret he had kept for years, the reason for his success, the virginity of his daughters was all at risk now. The night was deepening, and Talabi's frustration reached its peak. He slammed his fist onto the wooden table in front of him, startling the workers who were still in the compound. He could barely concentrate, his thoughts a whirlwind of fear and confusion. His grip tightened around the arms of the chair, and he muttered to himself, pacing up in the dimly lit room. She said she was pure, but how can I be sure? How can I know? It was around midnight when a sudden shout shattered the silence. Fire! Fire! Fire on the farm! Talabi's heart skipped a beat, and he rushed to the window, his eyes scanning the darkness in the distance. The sky was glowing with an ominous red hue. The wind carried the acrid scent of smoke, and in an instant panic struck his heart. His hands trembling, backed orders as his workers. Gather the water, get to the farm now, quick! But as he rushed outside, he realized just how bad the situation was. The fire was spreading quickly. devouring everything in his path. The crops, the trees, the years of hard work. Talabi had invested in the land. His heart sank. What is happening? He yelled at one of his workers as they tried to douse the flame. How did this happen? Who is responsible? No one could answer. The fire raged on, unpredictable and relentless. It had a life of its own. Talabi's mind raced. What if this was a sign? What if his world was crumbling right before his eyes? The farm, the source of his riches, was slipping away into nothingness, and the thought of his daughter's purity still lingered in the back of his mind. He couldn't help but wonder if the fire was the consequences of something more sinister. As the fire was being fought, Talabi's mind wandered back to Kikilomo. She had insisted she was still a virgin, but the thought planted in his mind grew like a seed in a fertile soil. The night of her return, she had refused to answer his question directly. Her defiance was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Her words rang louder and louder in his ears, and the truth of the matter seemed more distant with every passing second. I will go out more often now to see the word I have been missing. His voice echoed in his mind like a thought. His thoughts spiraled. Had she lied to him? Had she betrayed the very rules he had set for her life? It was possible. The longer she had been out there, away from his watching eyes, the more vulnerable she had become. His mind churned with worst-case scenarios. Maybe the fire was a sign of the cause he feared. Could his words have truly been tied to the virginity of his daughters? Or was it just an illusion built on a lie? Talabi's emotion exploded, frustration turning to rage. He felt as though he was losing control of everything. His farm, his wealth, his daughters, everything he had worked for seemed to be slipping away, unraveling before his very eyes. The fire, the loss of his crops, it all seems connected to Kikilomo's defiance. His obsession with her purity and his need to control her had brought him to this moment. And now he was paying the price. The fire was eventually brought under control, but Talabi stood frozen in the middle of the compound, watching the last of his harvest burn to ashes. His workers had done all they could, but the damage was already done. The field, once lush and bountiful, were now blackened and charred. With the fire finally extinguished, Talabi stood motionless in the glow of the embers, a thousand thoughts racing through his mind. He walked aimlessly towards his house, his legs heavy with dread. His eyes flickered to the door where Kikilomo had been locked away. Is this my punishment? He muttered under the breath. Is this the price I have to pay for my greed? For my fear? When he reached Kikilomo's room, he found her sitting on the floor still locked in. Her face was weary, but she looked up at him, her gaze steady despite everything that had been transpired. Talabi's eyes narrowed, the suspicion still clawing at him. He was angry, but now he was filled with something darker, an overwhelming doubt. He couldn't let this go. He couldn't let the fire, the destruction of everything he had built, go unanswered. You, he barked, his voice thick with accusation. Do you have something to do with this? Did you bring this curse upon us, all because you couldn't stay pure? Was it worth it? Was it worth defying me? Kikilomo stared back at him, her voice barely a whisper, as she answered, I didn't do anything, father. I have told you the truth. I am still pure. But Talabi's face twisted in disbelief. He couldn't accept it. I can't be sure of that. You have been gone. You have seen the world outside. You have probably done things that I cannot control, things that could ruin us all. The guilt and shame he had buried deep inside began to surface as his rage consumed him. His wealth, his farm, his entire existence. Now it was crumbling, and he was convinced it was Kikilomo's fault. The night has been long and full of devastation. Talabi's wealth, the farm he had worked tirelessly to build, was now reduced to smoldering ruins. He had watched helplessly as the flames consumed everything in their path, and as dawn broke over the horizon, he was left standing in the ashes of his former prosperity. His heart ached. The fire had left him with nothing, but his mind was clouded with another thought. Kikilomo. She had returned home the same night. claiming she was still a virgin. Talabi couldn't help but wonder if her disappearance and the fire was connected. Was her deviance a cause? A punishment for breaking his rule? With the weight of the world on his shoulders, Talabi could no longer contain his frustration. He ran, desperate, feeling as though the ground itself was giving way beneath his feet. He was consumed by one goal: to seek answers from the herbalist. The herbalist's home stood at the edge of the village, a place that had once been a refuge for those seeking spiritual guidance or help in times of distress. Talabi reached it, running, his breath ragged, and his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't bother to knock. He barged through the door, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear, confusion, and frustration. The herbalist, an elderly man with deep-set eyes and a serene demeanor, looked up kindly from his work as Talabi burst in. He raised an eyebrow, but his expression remained unchanged. "Talabi, what brings you here in such a hurry?" the herbalist asked, his voice as steady as ever. Talabi didn't waste a moment. He rushed towards the herbalist, barely able to contain the panic in his voice. "Is Kiki Lomo? She returned last night, and she insists she's still a virgin. But my farm, it caught fire that same night. I need to know what happened. What did you do to protect me? I have lost everything. Why did this happen to me?" The herbalist sat back, his face breaking into a faint smile that bordered on amusement. "You lost everything, Talabi?" he asked, his voice soft, but with a edge of mocking. "Your farm caught fire, and now you have come to me for answers." Talabi's frustration grew. "Yes, you promised me protection for my daughter, for my family's wealth. What did you do? Why didn't you keep to the end of the bargain?" The herbalist chuckled softly, his eyes twinkling with a knowing light. "Talabi, Talabi," he began, shaking his head slightly. "Did I ever tell you I performed some ritual to keep your daughter pure? No, I never did. You were destined to be wealthy, when you came to me or not. Your fortune was written long ago before you walked into my heart." Talabi's confusion deepened. "But you deceived me." His voice was shaking with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You told me you will protect her, that you will ensure her purity." "I never promised you that," the herbalist replied calmly. "You wanted to believe that I had some special power, something that could safeguard your wealth. I let you believe it so you wouldn't go to another herbalist. It is as simple as that." Talabi stepped back, his words spinning. "So all this time, you have been lying to me?" The herbalist's expression softening. "Not lying, Talabi. Just giving you what you wanted to hear. You needed to believe in something, and I let you. But your word was always your own. It's in your blood. It's in your destiny." Talabi's hands clenched into fists. "But what about the fire? Why did my farm burn now?" The herbalist looked at him for a long time, then sighed. "The fire is just a coincidence, Talabi. Nothing more. It happens. Sometimes the land is restless. Sometimes it's the wind. Sometimes it's careless hand. There is no deeper meaning to that. Go to your farm. Inspect the site. You will see for yourself." Talabi stood there for a moment, stunned. Was it truly a coincidence? Could it be that simple? His heart still ached for the loss of his farm, but now he was unsure of what to believe. The herbalist had always been a man of mystery, but this revelation shattered the trust he had built in him. "I will go to the farm," Talabi muttered, his voice hollow, "but you have not seen the last of me. I will find the answers I seek." The herbalist nodded, his gaze turning back to the herbs in front of him. "Do as you wish. The truth is right in front of you. It has always been." The morning after his confrontation with the herbalist, Talabi woke up with a heavy heart. He couldn't shake off the lingering doubt, the unsettling feeling that everything he had believed in had been a lie. The herbalist's words haunted him as he dressed hurriedly, making his way to the charred remains of his farm. The journey was long, and as Talabi approached the farm, the scent of smoke still clung to the air. His farm, once a symbol of his prosperity, was now reduced to blackened earth and ruined crops. The sight made his stomach churn with sorrow. Fire had ravaged everything. His hard work, his dedication, his life's ambition now lost in the flames. He stood at the edge of the destroyed farm, scanning the area, trying to make sense of what had happened. His eyes landed on a part of the field near the edge of the property. It was there, in that spot, where the fire had started. The charred remnant of a broken lantern lay scattered across the ground, its wick still smoldering faintly in the ashes. Talabi's heart sank. It wasn't some mystical force or cause. It was the carelessness of one of his workers. A simple mistake. A lantern left unattended has set the crops ablaze. All of this devastation, all the anguish he has felt over the years, was caused by something so ordinary, so human. He fell to his knee, his body trembling as the weight of the truth pressed down on him. The tears welled up in his eyes, his hands trembling as he reached for the soil beneath him. He cried out in regret, not just for the loss of his wealth, but for everything he had done to his daughters, the years of controlling them, imprisoning them in his home, all in the name of protecting his riches. It has all been for nothing. I have been a fool, he whispered, his voice breaking. I have ruined their lives, all for my greed. I have kept them from living, from knowing the outside world just because I believed some foolish ritual. He stayed there, kneeling in the ashes, until the weight of his regret became unbearable. Slowly, he got to his feet, a new resolve burning to his chest. He had wronged his daughters, he had wronged his sons, and now he will make it right. Talabi returned to the house later that day, his mind made up. He ordered his servant to release Kiki from her confinement, and soon she was standing before him, her eyes still weary but now filled with curiosity about what was to come. As his daughters gathered around him, Talabi stood before them, humbled and broken. His voice trembled as he spoke, the words feeling foreign coming from his mouth, but they were words he knew he had to say. "My dear children," he began, his eyes sweeping all over them, "I have wronged you all. For years, I kept you caged. I kept you from living, believing that your virginity was the key to my wealth. I thought that if I kept you locked away, the riches would flow on endlessly. But it was wrong, and I was wrong also." He paused, his chest tightening with emotion. "I deprived you of your freedom, your right to make your own choices, to have friends, to see the world outside. I thought I was doing it to protect you. But in reality, I was only protecting myself, protecting my own selfish desires." Kiki stood silently, her arms crossed over her chest, but her gaze softened as she listened to her father's voice. Her sisters too were quiet, taking in his apology. Talabi looked at them, his heart aching. "I am sorry," he continued, his voice breaking. "I should have trusted you, trusted that you make your own decisions. I should have been a better father." He turned to his sons, who had been silent all along, watching their father's remorse unfold. Talabi's heart clenched as he looked at his first son, who had always been patient but distant. He had neglected his sons just as much as he had in his daughters. "And to my sons," Talabi said, his voice deepening with sincerity, "I am sorry for neglecting you. I made you feel invisible, like you didn't matter. You were always just as important, just as worthy of my love and attention. I promise to be a better father to you henceforth." There was a long silence. Kikilomo was the first to speak. "Father," she said quietly, "I'm glad you finally see what we have been going through. But you can't undo the years of pain and isolation. You can't change the past. All we ask for now is freedom, for the chance to live our lives and make our choices." Talabi nodded, his eyes filled with tears. "I understand, Kikilomo. I have kept you from the world long enough. You and your sisters are free to live as you wish. Go to school, make friends, travel, experience the world. No more cages, no more rules." Kikilomo smiled through it, with tingled sadness. "Thank you, Father. It's all we have ever wanted." Talabi turned to his wives, who had been silent and witnessing his apology. He bowed his head slightly, as if acknowledging their suffering as well. And to my wives, he added, I apologize for not being the husband I should have been. I was so consumed by my greed that I neglected all of you. I will do better henceforth. From that day forward, Talabi's house was different. The daughters who had been confined to their compound were finally free to explore the world. They attended school, made friends, and discovered new things. Talabi's relationship with his sons grew stronger as well. He involved them more in his work, teaching them the values he had once kept to himself. Though it took time for the family to heal from the scars of the past, they gradually found a new rhythm, a new way of life that was built on trust, freedom, and love. Talabi's wealth never returned to its former glory, but he learned that true prosperity wasn't measured by the size of the farm or the riches in his vault. It was measured by the happiness and well-being of his family, and that was something he had neglected for so long. As for Kikilomo and her sisters, they embraced their newfound freedom with open arms, grateful for the chance to live their lives as they saw fit, and why Talabi would never forget the mistakes he had made. He took solace in knowing that he could still change and be the father his children deserved.